Now, the 24 hours post the completion and announcements of results of the by-elections in Kenya have been marked by mixed reactions. From the government camps, it's celebrations and jubilation. The results of this particular by-elections now give them confidence that ahead of the 2027 major elections, they're going to have a clean ground sweep, because now it has turned out clearly, according to government reports, that the grassroots supporters are still agreeable to government policies and the policies of the broad-based government. But from the United Opposition camp, this was not a fair and open election, and Mukisa Kitui now wants the government from actually feeding this particular snake that will bite them in 2027. And independent observers are also having their take, which might not be in compliance with both the United Opposition and the government's take. At the People's Mirror, we bring for you the full details of these three-dimensional looks of the reactions that have now enveloped the political space 24 hours after the completion and announcement of results of the 24 by-elections that were being held across the nation. So let's dive into it. From the government camp, the United Democratic Alliance Party's Secretary General now informs us that the broad-based arrangement secured 18 out of the 24 seats that were being contested in the recently completed by-elections. This, as according to the statements of the Secretary General of UDA, shows that the grassroots support is still amenable and agreeable to government policies. They take this as an opportunity now to sweep clean the ground come 2027 with UDA and broad-based colors. Now, on what this means for the UDA government, we delve into detail right away. For President Ruto, this has renewed his confidence and has given wind to his sails as 2027 blooms, because previous to these particular results, President Ruto's policies was actually something that he was not fully certain whether or not was being received and accepted by the grassroots officials. And you could not say that even right now it has changed, but from the pictures that we have seen of the rallies that the president held in Nakuru, you would say that the ground is now more amenable to two-term than they were previously. So Ruto now takes this opportunity to warn the United Opposition against having agendarless politics and using personalities and tribal mobilization as a backup for political winning. He shows now and says that the UDA party has showed that the Kenyan people are still agreeable to policies and things that actually change their life, and they detest away from personality and tribal mobilization politics. Ruto now has called upon the United Opposition to craft an agenda and deviate from their one-term slogans ahead of 2027 to have a plain level field in the competition, because he says now ahead of 2027, when the United Opposition will still be stuck on tribal mobilization without strategy, then the UDA and the broad-based arrangement will have that ground as a playing field politically in those elections. The by-elections have now confirmed for them that their policies are not rejected amidst the dominating noise in the Kenyan political scene in various grassroots, and this confirms to them from Turkana all the way to Magarini, to Mandera, to Mbeere North, to Malava, and every other part that forms part of the 18 seats that the UDA party and the ODM party combined and other parties under the broad-based arrangement secured in that previous election. So the broad-based arrangement, as I said, has won 18 out of 24 seats as per their report. Reported by Omar Hassan, showing clear national acceptance according to that UDA Secretary General. Aaron Cheruiyot, who is the majority leader of the Senate, points out that these particular results have defied global trends where mid-term polls always hurt the incumbent. And you remember there was a conversation prior to these elections being held that this was a mini referendum on a confirmation on whether or not the government was still sailing positively within its citizenry victory, or whether or not the united opposition was infiltrating the citizens and taking power from the government. So now the majority leader of the Senate, Honorable Aaron Cheruiyot, celebrates these wins and says that these wins have defied the global trends where midterm polls often hurt the incumbent administration. They say now Kenya is in history for being one of the countries where midterm polls confirmed that the incumbent could still win. Later on, we'll take a look at what the united opposition is saying out of these allegations, but first let us just receive these celebrations remarks that are coming from the winning camp, the UDA camp, from these previous by-elections. Now, this also has had an effect of solidifying the current arrangement within the government, broad-based arrangement. Prior to these elections being held, there were talks that if Mbeere North went sideways away from the government, then it would have, had a direct effect on the seat of the vice president, currently the deputy president under the current constitutional dispensation. People felt that if Mbeere North went sideways, then the seat of Kindiki post 2027 would have been affected. But this has turned out as now an opportunity to give more life to Kindiki individually, even without looking at President Ruto and UDA. This has been an opportunity for Kindiki to show that he's a political kingpin in the Mount Kenya area, and that is a deputy president that has people rallying behind him. He has used this opportunity to show his dominance in the area, confirming his statements that he had said earlier that he had a long-lasting political dominance in this region compared to Rigathi Gachagua. In his David versus Goliath sling and stone story, Kindiki now comes out victorious as the David that has laid the Goliath dominance of Rigathi Gachagua in this area. I'm just using the statements that Kindiki used, while he was also saying that the bullying of Rigathi Gachagua has dominated the mountain area, and so they intended to teach Rigathi Gachagua a political reason. As a result of it, the mountain area now looks at Kindiki differently from the meek soprano individual, perhaps not even if the entire mountain yet, because a lot of Rigathi Gachagua forces still hold strong, saying these particular elections were actually unfair, and that will be our second story still within this episode. But from the members that were undecided between Rigathi Gachagua and Kindiki, most people have now been seen swaying towards the Kindiki side from the win of Mbeere North, which if did not go to Kindiki would have had a very gross effect on his seat post 2027. And also for the UDA ODM arrangement, this actually now solidifies the camp within the ODM party that feel that they need to be in the broad-based arrangement, and now has add or put as ISO the other camp that feels like they want to depart from the Ruto camp in 2027. The united opposition's approach to this was independent, but the ODM approach and the UD approach to this was a broad-based arrangement kind of it. And so securing all the parliamentary seats, going to the broad-based arrangement and securing 18 out of 24 seats now has given more life to the broad-based arrangement, showing that it's actually moved now from a theory to a political reality. And so it's something that if they both explore, both the UDA and the ODM party moving into 2027, will form a strong political bloc that will be going into those presidential elections against the united opposition as a steady arrangement without any naysayers and infights from either of the individual parties. Now, people are looking at this as an opportunity for the ODM party now to actively participate in the broad-based arrangement and shy away from the political statements and divisions that had existed previously, or that were being communicated low-key to have existed within the ODM party regarding this particular arrangement with President Ruto. Another relationship that has been strengthened as a result of this particular by-elections from the United Democratic Alliance camp is the Luhya unity. Now, later on, we'll take a look at the move to have Malava and Mbeere North quashed as petitions are actually being prepared to that effect. But now Luhyas within the broad-based arrangement government, including Honorable Mudavadi and Honorable Wetangula, are finding their seats more confirmed within this arrangement. We do not know much of Honorable Wetangula now that the Ford Kenya party lost an MCA seat in Chwele Kabuchai to an independent candidate. But for Honorable Mudavadi, who was previously the leader of the ANC party, and you remember very well that Malava was previously under Honorable Malulu, and Malulu was under the ANC ticket prior to his death. So now Mudavadi has confirmed his loyalty and his influence by handing over his previous seat within the parliamentary seat to now the UDA government. And now this confirms his position within the UDA arrangement, remembering very well that Honorable Mudavadi does not serve in any elective position. He serves on a nominated position that is as a result of the whim and mercy of the president. And so him delivering this particular area, Malava, to the UDA camp was about his political future much as it was about this election. And so the relationship between Mudavadi and Ruto could be said to have been strengthened as a result of the win of Malava going to the government. We cannot close this part of the government side without looking at an individual called Geoffrey Ruku. Ruku was using this as an opportunity to stem his influence in Mbeere North and to penetrate the solid influence of both Justin B. Muturi and Lenny Kivuti. Now Mbeere North's result, which has confirmed the position of the UDA as the dominating party in that area from the results that were announced by the IBC, puts Geoffrey Ruku as the new rising kingpin of the Mbeere North area, who has the likelihood of dwindling or doing away with the influence of both Lenny Kivuti and Justin B. Muturi. So ladies and gentlemen, that is just some of the reactions and the political positioning that the recently concluded by-elections has had an effect on from the government camp and from the broad-based arrangement. Now let's take a look at retaliations and statements that are now coming from the opposition side. Mukisa Kitui, who is the spokesperson of the United Opposition, has blamed the government vehemently, saying that these elections were nothing close to being free and fair. And he talks about the state coordinated deployment of resources. We saw mattresses being donated in places like Mbeere North, food and relief in Kasipul, and the same in Malava constituency. He talks about security personnel. There was a withdrawal of personnel for key certain campaigners of Malava by election contender Seth Panyako. The campaigners including Honorable Boni Kalwale and the governor of Trans Nzoia, Natembeya, had their security personnel withdrawn at a very sensitive time. So Mukisa Kitui has blamed state coordinated deployment of resources, security personnel deployment and intimidation as the reason why this voting tilted the way it did. And so he said if these resources were not given to Magarini, these resources were not deployed in Kasipul, state resources was not deployed in Mbeere North, and the same was not witnessed in Malava, then the results of these by-elections would have been otherwise. And so he blames the government vehemently for that, saying that the by-elections that were witnessed in Kenya were nothing close to being free and fair. He also blames the IBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, for failing to have the sufficient powers to control disruption and violence. And he says that IBC remains a toothless dog if its only mandate is to actually receive votes, count votes, and declare a winner without having an external power or effect of controlling what goes around, the violence, the manipulations, and the disruptions that goes around the polling stations. And so he says with the Chicago event where one person was shot dead when Ruku stormed in, and also with the Kasipul issue where Honorable Opondo Kaluma was actually attacked by the goons, and such like incidents of violence shows how IBC is incapable of controlling disruption. And so moving with the same into 2027, he calls upon the IBC to fully consolidate itself as an independent body that can carry out elections and defend those elections from disruptions and violence. Mr. Mukisa Kitui also points out that the United Opposition are now now moving in to quash Malava and Mbeere North elections, and this is actually the news. This is the most interesting part of what is coming out of the reactions from the United Opposition this morning. The move to quash Malava and Mbeere North, most likely come Monday, we are going to see a lot of election petitions, going to the high courts to challenge the positions of the members of parliament elect for Malava and Mbeere North. And the United Opposition are now citing the violence around it and the manipulations of voters around it as some of the grounds that they want the elections in Malava and Mbeere North specifically to be quashed ahead of to be quashed, and new elections be carried out in those particular areas that are independent of infiltration. Now, Mr. Kindiki, who the United Opposition sees has declared himself as the senior-most politician of the mountain region, is told not to celebrate this so fast because it shows how he barely survived without the help of the government. Mukisa Kitui believes Honorable Kindiki would have not survived in Mbeere North, considering the fact that both two top contenders, Honorable Leonard Wamudende and Honorable Newton Karish, both attained 15,000 votes, and the gap between them was nothing short of 400, shy of 500 votes. And so he says that the win should not be celebrated because the government intercepted in Chicago, and that is the reason the 400 votes went the government way, according to Honorable Mukisa Kitui. Now, we have seen that now this calls for the United Opposition to have Malava and Mbeere North quashed is the main thing. They are saying they are preparing election petitions, and even JB Muturi hinted during the period that these votes were being counted and there was violence in Chicago via his X platform that they intended to prepare solid election petitions. So moving into Monday, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see an array of election petitions across the 18 regions that have since been taken by the broad-based arrangement being contested again in court, and with a likelihood of success or otherwise. But as it stands, this by-election has given Kindiki a fresh breath in their current arrangement with Ruto, and has also confirmed that the broad-based arrangement has now shifted from a dream into a political reality. Now, far from the reactions of the United Opposition camp and far from the reactions of the government, there are also reactions that have come from independent observers who took a center stage in these particular elections, and say that one of them include the professor of the United States International University, who has since commented on these elections and has said that the by-elections has revealed internal vulnerabilities. He says that while the Ruto's team was fully in Mbeere North, and while Rigathi Gachagua also had a very, very strong Mountain Kenya mobilization to the effect that both contenders in Mbeere North had the 15,000 mark as number of votes, this has revealed internal vulnerabilities, showing how much President Ruto will need Kindiki and Ruku moving into the 2027 elections to actually have support of the mountain area or split those votes. Without that, then that area will go to the United Opposition, confirming from this particular results that the difference between the winner was nothing less than 500 votes. Another independent observer now notes that all odds were against Kindiki, but on a small margin he survived, and so this shows how Ruto needs both Kindiki and Ruku for the Mount Kenya region and other leaders in the Mount Kenya region to work together, including Governor Cecily Mbarire, who has worked very actively in these particular elections, to work together ahead of 2027 so as to neutralize the Rigathi effect, without which the Rigathi effect might still play a very center role in the 2027 major elections. In the western part, independent observers have also taken a look independently, and they've said that Mudavadi proved his loyalty and influence by handing over Malava, because without that, this was a a do or die for his future politically and not for the election in Malava. So while Wetangula's future might seem shaky because he's the Speaker of the National Assembly under the Ford Kenya party, which lost an MCA by-election in Chwele Kabuchai, for Honorable Mudavadi, he sits comfortably next to the president, knowing that he delivered a previous ANC seat to UDA in Malava. Now, Natembeya and Wetangula are individuals that both failed in this election from the eyes of independent observers, saying that Natembeya's Tawe movement failed to deliver Malava to the united opposition, and Wetangula, as I said, repetitively lost his Ford Kenya seat in Chwele Kabuchai, which has for a long time been his backyard. Remember, sometimes prior to these elections actually coming to an end, Natembeya pointed out that without these elections becoming a success, he'd have nothing to share with his colleagues or his co-principals in the table, because his co-principals told him to go hand over Malava first to the united opposition before coming to negotiate for something in the table within the united opposition. He used that personally as a campaign slogan in Malava, asking the people of Malava to actually rally behind the gentleman Seth Panyako. Now that Panyako has since quit politics and that region has not gone to Natembeya owing to the way those particular elections were carried out, it seems that in this particular by-election, both Wetangula and Natembeya have lost their voices in their negotiating tables, both in the united opposition and in the government. But politics is interesting. One day it plays this way, the other day it is discussed and it plays another way. We couldn't say that any of them have lost. We could only say that they have all learned ahead of 2027, and now it's a regearing period and a reshaping period for both the government, the united oppositions, and the independent candidates ahead of 2027 to look at the places where they got it wrong and correct, make it right ahead of 2027, and look at the places where they had it right and keep doing that ahead of 2027 to secure wins to their respective camps. Here are the People's Mirror, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure recapping that for you. Until the next episode.